I thought I would shake this segment up a little bit and go ahead and make at least one of them a versus segment as well. So I went ahead with this one since it just pretty much immediately jumped out at me that these two would be relatively comparable given the sort of isolated, limited character setup where it's basically the danger of being stuck in the cold in one way or another in one location, with many other things coming into play along the way. And obviously, we're going to start with Wind Chill and then work our way into Frozen. Um, this is another one of those movies, admittedly, where the first time I saw it, I pretty much hated it. I felt like it was kind of trying to do a whole lot of things when it had pretty much a nice, promising, limited setup enough as it was. But I've seen it a couple of times since then, over the past 11 years since it came out. Um, and it is worth noting that I believe one of the writers once said that when they went into the writing of this movie before they'd even started, their concept they had in mind was to make the world's smallest haunted house movie. And you can get a sense of that, even if the location might not quite be that. They do find a very similar territory and a similar tone to go with, especially the way in which they go about their scares and finding those. Obviously, our plot involves pretty much just two people, with Blunt's character and Ashton Holmes, who you probably remember was Viggo Mortensen's son in History of Violence. And he is a complete and total stranger that is offered to give her a ride back home to Delaware for Christmas, until they take a detour and they get stuck in the snow and can't get out, as the temperatures are going down and what appear to be ghosts are appearing around them. And one of them may or may not have internal injuries from the crash itself. Just adding on the conflict even more when that's just the start of it. And obviously, these two characters do not have names. They are girl and guy through the whole thing, and that's how they're credited in the credits as well. Which nowadays you don't really see outside of an amateur student film, but apparently the writer's idea was that it was sort of like this, not only just a thing of simplicity, but also sort of having the characters start at like just a complete and total blank slate, like all the way down to their names. So that they could kind of build the characters and we kind of get to know them from bottom to top as we go. So as we start, we don't know a damn thing about either one of them. For her, I'm not sure how much sense that makes. For him, it makes a lot of sense because there's a mysterious quality, sure. Whether that's a good thing kind of fluctuates as the movie goes. So, as it starts and they're driving down the road, and they're slowly talking, like he's actually irate because she's not talking to him enough. And it's clear that this is, I mean, it's revealed as the time goes on, but it's pretty clear from the get-go that he's kind of set this up in a way to benefit himself from the get-go. But on the way there, they start talking, like, you may be, if you haven't seen it or you don't know what the concept really is, you may be asking yourself, so if it's going to be more than just, I think the actual back in the case from a critic says, this isn't merely a horror film about things going bump in the night. So you might be wondering, oh, well, what else is there to it? Well, the movie just kind of straight up tells you at the very beginning when they're driving down the road and Blonde asks, so if you're in my class, you took the final, right? And it's like, what was that last question all about? And he talks about Nietzsche's theory of eternal recurrence. And you're like, oh, okay. Okay, that's where the movie's going then. It's like, thank you for just laying that right out. So, and yeah, just with the ghost concept as well. So, the thing about this is you may be also thinking that maybe there's more, you know, sort of a thriller factor to this movie apart from the fact that it just has ghosts in it and they're stuck in freezing weather. Not to mention that while this weather is freezing and the snow is coming down, one of the windows doesn't go all the way down. So there's that, and on her side, go figure. But there is something else here, where there is another potential threat, even without the ghosts, or even without the low temperatures, and that is this dude. Who is, not only is he mysterious, but just everything, this is a guy that doesn't just raise red flags. This guy is like the fucking CEO of Red Flag Incorporated throughout pretty much the whole thing. And just every now and then there's just these little things that you can tell are like totally creeping her out, and she knows, or just it's a bad idea to be in a car with this dude, especially for how long she has to be there, let alone before they're even stuck in the snow. So there's little moments that, you know, may not mean anything, like when she's talking about how she's gonna get laser eye surgery because she doesn't like the way she looks in her glasses, and he's like, "Oh, you look great in your glasses. Don't worry about it." And pretty alarmed, she says, "I don't wear my glasses outside of my dorm. How would you possibly know that?" And before he can answer that, he stutters his way into saying, "Oh, look, a gas station." And it never really seems to occur to her, like, right away, "Oh, well, this ride's over." She looks a little like she's suspicious, but I think that alone, we should be long past suspicious, but the movie has to continue, so she goes along with it. And if you're going to get into this movie at all, you got to get used to that. If that's the kind of thing that you just don't buy immediately, good luck with the rest of it. That may be another thing of what my problem was with it when I first saw it, where I just pretty much didn't like it from right up front. But it is also that, like, I do get a sense of, especially when they get to this gas station, they're trying to build up a sort of like paranoia that she has, where obviously he's not doing that any favors. But then you also have this moment where she seems to be locked in the bathroom, which in the long run, as a whole, in like when you look at the whole thing, seems to be a totally meaningless scene in this movie. So I think there's supposed to be sort of this things around her are making her increasingly paranoid, including this guy. But it's like, I just feel like we've like like if the bathroom thing had happened before he made the glasses comment, maybe there would be something here. But it just seems like things aren't quite in the right order of how they should progress in regards to how she feels about this dude. And there's also like it would probably be a lot more believable if they made him just a bit more subtle. But like I said, the way he like so clearly looks guilty after she calls him out on the glasses thing, but then later on there's the thing where it's he's talking about, you know, if you're in a bar fight, you know, you just take glass and you punch the dude in the nose, and he like goes like he's gonna pantomime this directly at her, and he's so aggressive about it that he and I think it's one of those things where I think the director wanted people to think, oh, is he a threat or is he not? But the thing is you're doing nothing but making him look like a threat. There is no in between. There's no gray area here. It just looks like one thing. And then we're actually supposed to believe later that maybe we were jumping to conclusions and we need to get to know him better. Hence why he started at a blank slate. But like I said, it could have used a lot more subtlety in that regard. Because after a while it gets to the point where, like, I'm not even sure how the creators feel about this guy, the writers or the director or anybody, because it's like they kind of almost like they give him a sort of sense of humor in this stalkery quality that he has now, where he's talking about the groceries that she forgot that he bought, like paid $60 for, and she's like, oh, you got the cornichons. Oh, I love cornichons. And he just like looks at her in like in this total deadpan way, just says, "I know." And it's like, I can't tell if it's because she talked about the cornichons before and he was sick of hearing it, or if that was the "I know because I've been stalking you." And either way, it's supposed to be like this comedic delivery almost. And it's like, I don't know what the hell's going on with this dude, but not in the way I think the creators want me to be thinking that way about him. I don't know. But then there's also these moments that just like, they're like once, and there's never really been something to imply it before, and there isn't afterwards. Like, after he's been playing around and he makes the joke like he's screaming like he's been grabbed, but he's just reaching for the candy bar. But then he needs the scissors that she has to open it. And he goes from laughing and joking to like really aggressive and says, "Give me the goddamn scissors," just so he can open this candy bar. And it's, I don't know, I feel like there's some things lost here. It's like some scenes that are missing or something that balance out these sort of crazy-ass qualities in him. And it's, especially when we see where this character goes. Like, this would be, I mean, we would wonder what the hell she was thinking sticking around this long, but as long as she did anyway before she got stuck. But it's like, like there's got to be some sort of balance here that makes him seem at least a little more trustworthy, and then balance it out with the lashing out or whatever. And I feel like the movie is like way too quick to let him off the hook too. Like they give him an innocence like way too fast, and especially when we see, you know, how he knew that she needed a ride because he looked over her shoulder, and he set it up by putting the sign up, even though he's not even, he lives like 10 minutes away or something, and not in Delaware like he said. And it's like, and the movie basically uses this as the turning point to where she starts to understand him. And I feel like I don't know. I don't know how to take this, but I feel like though that they really could have ramped up the tension a little bit more. Obviously, we've got all the other stuff going on, but I mean, you really could have done something with making him like this wild card, where he could be one thing one minute and then a completely other thing the next. And I think that's what they're trying to do, but it really only comes off one way most of the time. And I don't think, and it's not like a problem with Holmes's performance either. It seems to strictly be in how he was created from the beginning, in the writing and everything. So that's, there's just something wrong, and that's like a huge portion of the movie that should work a lot better than it does, and it probably would have made the movie a lot better if they could have sorted that out a little more. But yes, but we do have a lot of other things going on here when the characters pretty much have no choice but to bond. And like I said, even in that scenario, like even with crazy-ass Martin Donovan banging on the window, and even with, you know, the weird zombie dude that pukes up slugs or whatever roaming around, the creepy-ass priests, the frozen bodies, I still just feel like that she gets a little too close to this guy after everything that's led up to this point. But like I said, I see what they're going for, and I can appreciate it to an extent. And then so yeah, you do have some of these scenes that like are genuinely chilling. Like when we first see the people first walking around, or when we see the dude sort of circling the car as he goes up the street. It may lose its impact a little bit when she chases him off and he disappears. If you saw this movie anytime after 2014, you may see the scene a little differently when he says, "You saw a guy, where did he go?" And she says, "Into the woods." So, with that though, we do also have some follow-up scenes, like shortly after that scene when they're saying, where is everybody that we saw, and we see like the priest over her shoulder back here, and it's like there's just little moments like that that hardly draw attention to themselves are the creepiest things here. Or like I said, just there's multiple scenes later when they're just in the car just doing whatever they need to do, and you can just still see just the frame of whoever, whether it be Martin Donovan, the priest, or the zombie-like dude or whatever, and you never know which one's which either, even though they all feel equally threatening and equally terrifying. Stuff like that we needed. I wouldn't say we need a lot more of, because it's pretty consistent, but it's. But yeah, but yes, we do also have the addition of the Martin Donovan character, who is great in this, by the way, as he often is, but here in particular. Because usually he's a bit more like, I don't know if he always plays trustworthy characters, but I don't recall having him play a character this scary before, where he just seems like this usual, at first he seems like a usual cop, then he seems like a usual ghost, but then he can go from calm to aggressive so quickly, almost as quickly as the guy that she's in the car with. But Martin Donovan's the one we're supposed to be really scared of, especially given his backstory. And it's like, not only does he have like a calling card, like anytime Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree comes on the radio, which is a really cool technique that sort of is this foreboding thing whenever you hear it. Usually it's a bit cheesy and overdone when you take a song that's like so not threatening and you make it threatening. But it works pretty well here. It was a very, you would never think that song in particular, but it was surprisingly well chosen. But not only that, like even without that, it still just feels like you can like sense him once we meet him and know the threat that he is. And there's something really cool about that and really creepy. Though I do think that you do kind of run a risk here. Like I was talking about at the beginning when I said the reasons I didn't like it the first time I saw it. It does feel like you're kind of running a risk to set up something this small scale, and you've got like the zombie dude that pukes slugs, and you've got the frozen bodies and all that. It sort of almost makes it turn into like a monster movie. When maybe staying a bit more downplay could have done it, or have more scenes that are find more ways to add scares to them just being in the car. I know that's very limiting and very probably difficult, but and it is good that they don't stray like too far. Like whenever I think the only time they stray to where you pretty much can't see the car in the background is the one time he goes inside the church. So they did still use their settings, and it's surprisingly like it's really well shot given like the constant rotation. Like I think it was like partially it was on location, partially it was on a sound stage, and partially it was in like this sort of refrigeration sort of thing, where they pretty much kept the temperatures constant, and just going lower and lower to really find that discomfort. I think Holmes said once that he was like, there are many times in the movie where we see him freezing and he's not acting. So that adds a really nice effect to it, and they sort of get the authenticity of like seeing the breath and all that and the shaking and all that. Really sort of adds to that thing. But like, once again, on top of that, you've got the stuff going on. You've got the potentially freezing to death on top of constantly seeing figures circling the car or seeing Martin Donovan in the damn windows. And it really can get you. It's like, what is it? It's 2 o'clock in the morning as I'm saying this. I'm getting a little creeped out describing it. But still. And then, of course, to talk about what Blunt does. Obviously, it's really interesting. I think when she was doing press for A Quiet Place, she said something about the fact that horror movies aren't particularly her thing, but she's like so amazing in them. She can play terrified like nobody else, whether it's this or A Quiet Place or The Wolfman or whatever. But then there's another whole emotional aspect of this movie, which once again kind of loses its luster if you don't totally buy the guy being a trustworthy person. But there's still that connection that does eventually form, inevitably. As they sort of fall into that, and the helplessness starts to set in, and when she like breaks down and she says, I just want to get through this, like I just want it to be over. And when she does this, it's so convincing that you just sort of have this, like your heart sinks and you feel like daytime is never going to come again. Like it just feels so far away, and they even play that up by showing us the time throughout the movie, where it's like 11 something after you feel like it should be 4 o'clock or something, and then it's only like 2 in the morning, and then even when it's 5 in the morning, everything is still just pitch black and just covered in white and darkness. And she just all of that working together. It's just she alone in that scene where she breaks down just really brings that fear to life in a way that impacts the entire whole of the movie. And then it's eventually we do reach the ending where his internal injuries, he succumbs to them, and she has to turn this horror movie into a tragedy. Which probably only she could have done. It only really, like I said, it's hard to buy that she would change her mind on him so quickly throughout this night, regardless of what they've been through together. But the way she's able to sell it is how the ending ends up as sad as it does. It's the way that she really brings that out. The emotion does feel really real, because like I said, on paper it really wouldn't. She had to bring that to life if the movie was going to sell this, and she does. So that the movies are like there's like a huge debt of gratitude here. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about this. So it's still very mixed, but I can appreciate what they were trying for and what they were going for. I can certainly appreciate what she brings to it, and like I said, the scares, or the creepiness factor, maybe not big scares, but the creepiness factor is definitely there, so that's the really important thing. So with that in mind, we can go on to Frozen now. She's not in Frozen, despite the fact that I'm doing this as part of her segment, but it does have Kevin Zegers, her co-star in the Jane Austen book club, so there's a little something here. And the first thing I always kind of associate with this movie, unintentionally, is obviously the title. Is the title of a much more famous movie now that came out 3 years after this one. And, like, not only that, but there was a theater down the way that's like it's not like a chain, it's like just owned by those people, so they run their own website. And when the Disney movie Frozen came out, somebody made a mistake, and this poster was the one on the website for like the whole duration of that movie's release. It could have been a joke somebody was playing, I don't know, but that was probably more or less how I vaguely remembered hearing about this when it first came out, but I didn't see it till a while after, probably shortly after the fiasco at the theater, so on that website. So Frozen is by Adam Green, the guy that did Hatchet like 3 or 4 years earlier, and it was apparently it got a decent reaction. It played at Sundance, and then it was released like 2 weeks after that, I think, after it played there. And so we have, it's once again pretty much a three-person thing. You've got Kevin Zegers, Shawn Ashmore, and Emma Bell as these three people. Zegers and Bell are a couple, and Ashmore is his best friend. And they're on a regular skiing trip, and then they get on the ski lift, and this is continuous throughout the day. At one point, it's like they almost know that, or they obviously know that the crowd knows what the setup is, so they try to fake it out first in the daytime with everybody around, where it stops once. It could just, obviously, it's also a bit of foreshadowing, but it's like, regardless, it's like, well, this isn't going to be the time that it happens. It's during the day, we can see people in the background, everything's fine. But then it does make you wonder, like, so how will we end up getting to that point where it's only them and somehow they are left there? Well, we'll get to that, but in the meantime, it doesn't have the most promising of starts. That's not to say that it keeps it up the whole way, but it doesn't have the particularly promising start, especially with these characters, because at first it does seem like they're those characters that are intentionally annoying just so we can see them suffer, like almost any average horror movie. So they have stuff like, they go to her and they say, like, oh, get us free tickets, you can do that because you're hot, or whatever. There's like an awkwardness between them, especially as a couple, where it's like the Zegers character doesn't know how to be a boyfriend, so he's like awkwardly giving her pet names she doesn't like, and like poking her face in weird ways, and it's like, it's really hard to find a connection with them at first. And they have riveting conversations, like Ashmore's character's weirded out that a girl called him by his last name in bed. Shit like that. They argue between the difference between tobacco smokers and pot smokers. Kevin Smith dialogue, this is not. They talk about how they're talking about Jaws, and it's like, so there's a bit of foreboding when they're talking about, another horror movie that sort of builds. But it's like, oh, the girl on the poster is hot and she's naked, so it's all that. Eventually 9/11 comes up. It's just, you have no idea where in God's name the direction these characters are going to go, and you really could not give up one possible shit about them. But as the movie goes on and the more we learn about them, I kind of wonder if that's the point, to sort of catch you off guard and make you think they're just the usual brain-dead idiots in a horror movie, until we actually do get to know them, and then they become infinitely more sympathetic as the movie goes on, and it sort of catches you by surprise when that happens. So obviously we eventually get to where the concept is going. And the thing is there are similar concepts about this being stuck in one location thing, like open water will immediately come to mind. There were two the same year with Buried and 127 Hours. This one seems to be kind of much more in the Buried vein, where it seems much more, obviously, like Danny Boyle did this whole, frenetic feel despite being in one location, whereas this one definitely plays up like the total and complete isolation by showing you the isolation without really much of a comparison. Well, they do a little bit of that with the movie has a really good use of sound, which you probably wouldn't expect from a movie that's in one location in midair with three people. But they do like the sound the snow makes when it really starts coming down, and they start saying like it's like needles is what they say, but you can like almost feel that by the sound effects as it's coming down. And then there's a point in time when Kane Hodder comes in on a snow groomer underneath them, and they think that there's help, but of course it's a fake out. So the way they really play up this isolation, because it's one thing if you see help, like you see your helped civilization, and then just that, just soul crushing way you see it just drive off as you're unnoticed. That would be one thing, but not only do they do that, but they use this sound where it's like you got the sound of the storm, you've got like the sound of the wind and all that. You've got the snow groomer that he's driving, you've got them screaming and yelling, and all of this is happening all at once as he's going away, and then there's just a cut. And after that cut, it's just them still on the lift, and it's just dead silent. And it's like there's like nothing more soul crushing than that, just the silence itself. It's also an interesting bit of irony that like the one glimpse of hope that they had, like the one sign of hope, is the guy that played Jason, most famously played Jason in the Friday the 13th movies. And him going away was the sign of lost hope. So there's also the Hatchet connection as well, but that's mainly where I take that. And then eventually you've got to get to the point where, and they do a really interesting thing here to really play with expectations, and that is the moment where we know one of them is going to try to jump off. And of course, Kevin Zegers is the one that volunteers. And the thing here is that this would be the moment, like, you don't realize how early it's going to happen, because if you like say you look at the structure of 127 Hours and you compare, you would think the moment when one of them jumps off would be a similar point to in 127 Hours when he decides to cut his arm off. But it's not. It's as soon as they think to do it, like, that shit's gonna happen. And there are so many, like, we're not gonna build to that. It's gonna be something that just makes the situation significantly worse. And that's the thing too, though, is that before he does this, you would just think like, oh, maybe it's a stupid idea with these stupid characters or whatever, or it's happening too early or whatever. But there's something, they make it so incredibly sympathetic, this decision that he makes, by having it where his girlfriend starts to get like frostbite on her cheek, and it's when he sees that he's like motivated to, I have to save her, I have to get out of this now, so I'm gonna be the one that jumps. And it's like that's kind of the turning point where you just immediately start caring about the characters a lot more than you did when we started, a lot more than you ever thought you would. So I thought that was done really well, but then once again, once it happens, they just create a much bigger mess. They've got higher stakes now because they've added bleeding out to the problem. He's got the bone sticking out, but every time they cut to it, you just can't. But then there's also the increasingly intense things that they add to it. Like, this is also around the time Ashmore decides that he's going to try to climb down the wire, and then when he sees that that's pretty much impossible without killing himself. And then, of course, they add wolves into the mix, and the wolves come into play a lot sooner than you think. So once that happens to Zegers, it's like there is like a total and complete helplessness. Like, just when you think they've reached the point of total and complete helplessness with him down there and them up here, it just gets so worse so quickly. But the thing is also is like, you just have the ruthlessness of this scene that's like, not only is it what's happening, but it's just as gut-wrenching to watch her reaction to it, where they have to just sit up there and like hear it happen, and just seeing them break down. But the interesting thing is that I liked that the movie had, like, there was a sensitivity to the characters that we didn't see, like, the fresh aftermath of it, where, like, after it happened and after we see her reaction, you just keep anticipating that cut to the carnage, and we never get it. We see it, like, in glimpses as it's happening, but once it's done, we stay up here. And I thought that was, like, a really sensitive gesture to that character, to, like, sort of give him the dignity of not having us see him like that. Though it does kind of contradict that when Joe does not get that treatment at all later. Though that is also, I think, in that particular sense, was to add more of the hopelessness to her once she is by herself. There's also, like, this movie is also sort of weirdly comparable to Gus Van Sant's Jerry a little bit. Just with much less walking and much more sitting. Which is not a bad thing at all. And then once they do an interesting thing where it's like, when it's obviously going to be whittled down from 3 to 2, the decision of who it was that was going to be offed in the middle of it, and it's like, to make it the Zegers character is like, because you think of all the different combinations and what this would have come to. So it's like, if it had been her and it was left with the 2 best friends, then we probably pretty much know what we'd be in for. Or let's say it was Joe that went down there and died, and it was the couple, and then it's like, well, then it basically would have been open water again. So to leave the 2 characters that don't really have that, like, the one connection between them is what's gone now, and they do kind of have, like, or particularly him to her, there's like a pre-existing resentment that they now have to come through, and it's like, once they have to work this out together, then there's like a whole other layer of character we can get here and much more appreciation for them. And it's like, and you would think, like, the story when he's talking about how he and Zegers met, and it's sort of like, you kind of see, like, it would seem like manipulative, like, in the worst way. But there's, like, just something so sincere and believable about it, that it just really adds to the character even more. And so I think that's what really makes it effective, the certain decisions they made in regards to character and how they chose which character was going to do what. Even if it does sort of go, like, just full-on hopelessness, fuck you at the end, where she just barely makes it out but has to deal with everything that she does leading up to that. So with a movie, I talked about The Bone earlier, with a movie that's just so small scale, and it isn't really building itself up as some full-blown horror movie. It is nice to see still, like, some admirably gross effects. Like, on top of The Bone, you've got, like, when her hand freezes to the bar and she has to peel the skin off of it. There's just stuff like that. It's almost like, like I said, you almost kind of admire it, as gross as it is, where you're like, that's the fact that you could still sort of fit that kind of gore in, but it makes sense. And it's not like overkill either, but it's just enough to make you not look. It is really kind of cool too. So obviously the main thing that was really going to drive this was you have to have impressive performances, which it does, that really sort of bring that terror to life, and also bringing, just the humanity of the characters to life also, and really sort of give dignity to this ridiculous, almost maybe laughable concept on paper, before you realize how well it does actually work. So yeah, so that's what these 2 are. Obviously Blunt is the strongest performance of the main 5 performances we're looking at, but I think it's pretty clear that overall Frozen is probably the stronger movie, much better put together, characters that are much easier to sympathize for and understand. So, I mean, once again, you do obviously care for the girl in this also, but yeah, there's just all those problems that the movie has going on with it, despite the stuff that it does do right. I'm not really sure what's up with this case. I don't know who this is supposed to be. Perhaps it's definitely not Blunt. It could be, like, maybe the girl that Martin Donovan killed and buried or something. I don't know, it doesn't really look like her either, but it's like, because the poster is Blunt's face, but the snow. And like this is like a straight to video case. Like if Blunt's name wasn't on it up here, it's like this would just look like some straight to video bullshit. So I don't know who okayed this, but yeah. So anyway, that's what we are doing here. So obviously we're gonna go back to the regular format next time with wherever we are at that point. We're getting close to the end. We've got maybe 5 more or so. So, yeah, so until then, that's it.